really warm welcome to Urban Flower Collective. My name's Lisa and I'm your host here. So today I'm going to show you how to make these gorgeous little pansies. So these come in an array of colours. You can see they can be really vibrant, they can be a little bit more plain, bold colours, sort of really subtle colours as well. You can have beautiful pale whites and pinks. But they're a really good filler flower, and as you can see they look really nice on it in a display as a really bold colour pop. So they're really simple to make, and you can have a lot of fun with dusting and painting them up afterwards. So let's just get started. I'll tell you what we need as we go along. So first of all, I've rolled out my white sugar paste, and we're going to start with white for all of these because then we can get really vibrant colours. I think if you start off with coloured flower paste, yes, you can dust them up, but sometimes they tend to be a little bit flat. So I'm just going to start with white. If you want to use coloured, you can. I'm using my favourite. This is ultra fine. This works well for my conditions. You find a flower paste that works for you. This works really well. It doesn't flop for me and it dries nicely. But you know, you can use whatever you want. I would experiment with several different brands and see what you find works best for you. Some dry quicker, some take a little longer to dry. So if you're slow, then that's better. But yeah, just have a play around and see what works for you. So I've rolled this out. Now I've rolled it out just on a hand pasta machine right up to level 9. So that's the thinnest it will go on the pasta machine. I can see my fingers through it, so it's nice and fine, and that's how you get more realistic looking flowers. The finer the petal, the better. Now I've got a set of pansy cutters here. So there's one that's a little bit of a heart-shaped cutter. And then there's two sort of rounder cutters. Now, if you don't have pansy cutters, you could probably use a eucalyptus leaf cutter for this heart-shaped one. And you could probably squash down a couple of rose leaf cutters, you know, squash them in, or cut out a rose leaf and cut the top off if you haven't got that. If you want me to put a template in the note, then make a comment below and I can leave some templates in there. But we've got 3 cutters, so the heart-shaped one, a larger one and a smaller one. So we're going to need one, so it's only 5 petals on a pansy, so we need one of the heart shapes, and then we need 2 each of these rounder shapes. So as you can see, it is a really simple flower, not many things to cut out at all. Now if you're making a few, then just cut these all out at once, it saves time. I'm just going to keep this paste in case I make some more later. So I'm just going to pop it in my plastic wallet. Now if you don't have one of these plastic wallets, you could use a document wallet, you know, just a plain polythene document wallet. But what I'm going to do is pop all of my petals in between these 2 sheets of polythene just to thin them out a little bit more. I know we've made them super thin, but we can always make them a little bit thinner on the edges. Now what I've got here is a boning tool. It's a craft tool. You can get these on Amazon. They come in a pack of 2 like this, but this little one is really good. Now if you're going to make a lot of sugar flowers, I would recommend getting one of these to do this job. If you haven't got one of these, you could use the side of a rolling pin. You could even use the side of a paintbrush or even a ball tool to do it, but you might get more of a ridge with a ball tool. But this, all I'm doing is I'm not really changing the shape at all, and if you've rolled it out too thick, you might just change the shape. So if you do that, then just cut it out again once you've thinned out. But I'm just thinning the petals. I want to not be able to feel a ridge when I run my finger between the polythene and the flower paste. So I'm doing the same for all 5 petals. So just getting these really super paper thin on the edges. You can see it's stretching out a little bit, but I'm trying to keep the shape of this petal. So we've got our 2 smaller, 2 larger, and that heart-shaped. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Now, pansies have got quite straight veins in them. So what I'm using is just this universal, it's a Katie Sue Designs multi veinner. You could use any kind of veinner that's got straight lines, maybe a magnolia, a lotus flower veinner, just something with straight lines. Even a rose veinner might do. You don't want a crisscross pattern, you want just straight lines, but I find this one's quite ideal. Next, I'm going to take some 26 gauge wire. So we just want a thin wire here. I'm trying to feel which is which. Yep, I think that's it. 26 gauge wire, and I'm just going to cut this into 5. We don't need very long stems on this because pansy stems aren't long. 2, 3, 4, 5. And then taking some of our excess paste from earlier, we're just going to take a tiny little bit and pop it onto the end of each of these wires. Now if you're slow at this, just do one at a time. This paste needs to be super sticky, so if your paste dried out a little bit, get some fresh paste, give it a work up, but if it's not super sticky, this won't work. So I'm just going to put it on all 5 here, just for speed. You take your time. If it feels a little bit bulky, you can just roll it out on the side. So do this for all 5. We don't need it to go too far, we just want it to go in the very ends of these petals. And this is our cheat's way of popping the wires into the petals. You could use a veining board if you prefer, but I just find this way much quicker. And it's a little less fiddly for me. It's my preferred method. So that's all 5. I'm going to take each petal out, if I can get them out. You can see the edges are like paper, they're super thin now, which is what we want. We want these to look nice and floaty and fine. So I've got them all out. I'm going to bring over my veinner. So as I say, use any kind of veinner that's got straight lines in it. And what we're going to do is pop this wire just to the very end of the petal, flip it over because we want it on the back. I'm going to lay that in. You could do all 5 at once with this one, but I'm just going to do one at a time to show you. I'm going to press down, and that should secure our wire in place. So I'm going to do the same for all 5. So just pop that on the back, make sure it's in the middle. Okay, so that's our petals on the wires. I'm just going to bring over a petal pad now. I'm going to pop these on. So this is just a foam pad, quite a firm foam pad. And I'm going to get a medium-sized ball tool. Now if you haven't used a ball tool before, we wanted half on the petal and half on the pad. And I'm just going to go around the edge just to give that a little bit of movement, just a little flutter. It's not a really frilly flower. In fact, some of them in my garden have no frill on at all, but I think it just gives it a little bit of movement and it makes it a little bit more interesting. Sorry, that's my dehumidifier that you can hear going off. Keeping everything nice and dry and humid free. Your humidity is not a friend of sugar flowers. So if you live in a humid climate, it might be worth investing in a dehumidifier to keep them pristine. So now we just need to shape them. Now there are 2 ways. Now let me find. So if you look at this, the blue one here or the purple one, I've got them where they are coming out over. So they look like they've opened up and they're in full bloom and full sun. So looking at mine that I have in my garden, they're like that in the afternoon. In the morning, sometimes they're a little bit more curled in. So like this one. Or yeah, well, like that one. I've got another couple down here that are sort of more curled in over as opposed to curled out over. So depending on how you want to do yours, you might want to do a mixture of the 2. I'll show you how we shape them. So I've just got some spoons. Now these are just plastic disposable spoons that I use over and over for a lot of my sugar flower classes. So these are worth investing in. I know they're single-use plastic, but I use them over and over again. You can wash them. So if you want this more kind of closed-in look, you would place them on the inside of the spoon sideways, because we don't want them to curl in too much. We just want a little bit of shape. So you'd put them that way. So just sideways on the spoon. If you want them to have that more sort of afternoon look, that more open look, then we're going to drape them over the back of the spoon. I think I'll do that with this one. I prefer the more open look, to tell you the truth. What you need to be careful of if you're draping them backwards is just put your thumb at the very end where your wire's gone before you drape them over. Just you don't want that wire popping out and through your paste. So I'm just popping my thumb down while I drape it over. And that just gives it a nice little bit of movement. Not too much, but a nice bit of movement, and it'll dry sort of in that opened out kind of way. Okay, so I'm going to pop those to one side. So that is that. Now, I'm going to leave them to dry, and I'm going to show you how to make the leaves. Now, I didn't have any cutters for the leaves, so what I did was took some from my plant outside. So I've done 3 templates. So if in doubt, just draw around. Just draw around the real leaf. Again, if you'd like my templates for this, I shall put them in the notes. Just let me know in the comments if you'd like them. So what I've done again is I've rolled out some paste. This time I've used a bit of holly green, so it's ready mixed. But I've mixed it with a bit of white as well because I didn't want a very deep green. So I'm going to cut the leaves out here. So I've just drawn around 3 leaves, and there's 3 different shapes. They're a bit of a sort of curvy leaf. They're not straight, so a little bit curvy. So I shall cut one out of each size. So I'm just using a cutting tool here. You could use a blade, an X-Acto knife, whatever you prefer. You could even use scissors if you want. So that's a small. It just gives an idea of the shape. So that's a small one. That's a large one. You can't really see on this green very well. And then we'll do the medium one. And we'll just do these exactly the same. They're just different sizes. So that's those. I'm going to keep this green because I'm going to need it for a little calyx later as well. So what we're going to do is exactly the same, but this time I'm taking 24 gauge wire because I do want it to have a little bit more substance. So I'll just cut 3 pieces of that off, and we are just going to pop these on the wires exactly the same way as we did for the petals. So now for this, I do have a pansy leaf cutter, but you can use any generic, a rose leaf cutter, any generic veiner, any generic veiner would do for this. Actually, I need this. So this time I want the paste to go further up because I'm going to put quite a bend in this petal at the end and this leaf at the end. So I want it to go nearly to the tip. So I'm just going to turn that over, so you want that on the back, and pop it in your veiner. As I say, if you don't have a proper pansy veiner, and not any universal leaf veiner would do. So same again, I'm just going to go nearly to the top of the middle sized leaf. Pop it in. These don't look a great shape at the moment, but don't worry, we're going to do some work on them. And then finally, our last one. And again, as I say, this flower paste needs to be super sticky for this to work. So if it's dried out a little bit, then please get some fresh, because you don't want your wires falling out of your leaves when you finish your arrangement. That should do. Then we're going to, again, bring over our pad, bring over our ball tool, and we're just going to ball around the edges of these, just to give them a little bit of movement. And then what we're going to do is just put a bend in these. Now be very careful it doesn't pop through, like I say, hold the wire at the end, but we want these to kind of curl back over, and then I'm just going to put them in half. This paste is very, very soft, but I'm just going to give it a little nip in the middle. I'm going to do the same for all three, so I'm going to bend them back over and fold them down the middle. The same for our third one, bend it back, fold it down the middle. So you can see the kind of curving over. This one's quite floppy, we're going to need to give this some support, but the curving back over. So what I'd normally dry them on, if I can find it, is this this drying rack, which has got kind of curves in, so I can support them and keep that curve in, like so. But if you don't have one of those, never fear. You can use a small rolling pin to do it, or you can use some aluminium foil and make a support for it as well. So you just want it to dry in that kind of flopped over way. So I'm going to pop those to one side and let those dry, and we'll bring back over our lovely petals. So I'm bringing over my first set of petals, and I'm going to show you two ways in which we can put some colour onto these. So first up, I'm going to do a messy way, and just to give them time to dry as well. So you can use normal petal dusts, like I always use in my tutorials. So there's all sorts of petal dusts here, whichever brand you prefer or whichever colours you prefer. But the one I'm going to show you first of all is this gorgeous sort of purpley one. And this is really typical, the sort of deep purple with the yellow centre, and that's a typical pansy. I've got lots of those in my garden, so I'm going to show you how I get the colour on those to make them that really nice deep colour. So what I'm going to use is a gel colour. Now I don't normally use gel colours on my flowers, but once this dries, it looks really nice, it looks matte. So it will look a little bit shiny to start with, but don't be put off. Now I've got, just to make things a little less messy, I've just got a artist's palette here. You could use a plate or a little bowl or whatever. But what we're going to do is just put some of this gel, oops, it comes out so quickly, this gel colour in here. And as I say, today I'm using Fractal Colours Violet. You can choose whatever colour you want, but if you want that bold sort of solid colour, then this is a great way to get it on without using lots of dust. Dust can irritate my airways, and I usually wear a mask if I'm doing a lot of dusting, but obviously I can't do that when I'm videoing, otherwise you wouldn't be able to hear what I'm saying. So all I've put into this gel is a little bit of dipping solution, or you could use Rejuvenator Spirit, or you can use any white alcohol as well, like a vodka, a high percentage alcohol. Just, you want something that's going to evaporate really quite quickly. But we want that deep colour. So because we want a yellow kind of centre on this, I'm going to leave the very ends of it white. Now I'm going to start off with the big one, the heart-shaped one. And if you just kind of dot out where you want your yellow to be, and then you know you can go mad from there. I might just put a little bit more fluid in. I don't want to water it down too much, because I don't want it to be too wet. I want this to dry quite quickly, but I do want that nice kind of deep colour that you can see on the first one. So this is, I mean, you could use dust, and you could use Rejuvenator Spirit with your dust, or you could just dust it on its own. But I just find this is a really quick, good old cheats method to get some really vibrant colour onto your petals. So you can see that's going on beautifully. So I'm just going to do all the fronts first. Just got a bit of paper down here because I've got a few to do and I'm going to get messy otherwise. So again, I'm just going to dot around here and I'm going to go for it. So this is really, really simple. So if you haven't dusted petals before or you haven't painted petals before, then this is the most simple way. Just a nice bold block colour, and that is so easy to do. So maybe a good one for your first try. So same again, make sure that they're pretty equal. You know, you don't have to have any skill for this. So just have fun with it, you know, go as bold or as vibrant as you'd like with these lovely colours. If you're putting these on a cake, you can make them any colour to match the colour scheme of the cake. So try and just go in straight lines to follow the veins on the petal. So if there are any streaks, they're going to look more like the lines on the veins on the petal. But you know, if you're not happy with the colour, you can wait for it to dry and go over it a second time with a second coat. But I think this is going to be more than enough. And it's the exact colour I was after. So how satisfying is this? You know, going from white to purple. And the final one. Now you aren't really going to see the backs, and particularly not at the bottom, but I am going to paint the backs as well. So let me just get a bit more of that on there. And the bottom of the back doesn't really need to be yellow because you're not going to see that. It's going to be covered with a little calyx. So I'm just going to go over the whole thing. So that's that bit done. So now I'm going to just take, actually I'm going to go for more of a sunset yellow. I'm going to go for this rainbow dust sunset yellow, and I shall just show you how you can make a similar kind of paint with this. So just pop a little bit in. We don't need much because it's only the very tips. And again, I'm going to just add a tiny bit of this dipping solution, just to make quite a thick paste again. And then actually I should really wait until this is dry, but I haven't got time at the moment, so I'm just going to dab that on. And I'm going to leave these to dry while I do the next design. Right, so I've left those to dry. So I've had a little clean up, and now we're going to do our second flower. So this time we're going to be doing this sort of funky blue one. So just to show you a little bit of different dusting up and painting up. So this time I'm going to be using some petal dust. I'm going to use petal blue and ocean blue. So these are both by Sugar Flare. And I'm also going to use, just to show you something different that you can use as well as gel colours, this is airbrush paint and this is in dark blue. And I'm also going to use, again, our sunset yellow, which is from Rainbow Dust. So let's bring over our petals. This should be dry now. Yep, they are. So I'll just take them off these spoons. So I've got our 5 petals again. So I'm just going to start off with this pale blue dust, and again I'll just put a tiny bit in here. Just these pots tend to tip over if you leave them stood up, so I like to decant this. And I'm just going to I'll start with the large ones first, and the bigger ones I'm just going to dust around the very edges. Now remember, with petal dust, less is more. You can't take it away. You can add more, but you can't take it away. So I'm just going to dust around the edges and then just bring it in a little bit. So you can see we're just slowly bringing this in. We want it darker on the edge and going into a more pale ombre effect. So I'm going to do that for all three large ones. Now for the smaller petals with this, I'm going to try and move these away because I'm getting them dusty. I'm just going to start at the base and work my way up. Now often with the smaller petals or the back petals on a pansy, they're a little bit different and they're usually a bit plainer and they don't have all the detail on that the middle three, the larger ones have. So I'm just going to start at the bottom and work my way up to dust. And again, I'm trying to go for that ombre effect, so a little bit paler as I get to the edges, which is the opposite of the large ones. So I want it a little bit darker at the base. So a little bit of blue there, but darker at the base. And actually, this is when I'm going to bring in my ocean blue. I'm just going to pop a little dab of that at the very bottom of each of these. So I'm going to just dab it off. I don't want too much. I'm just going to make it a tiny bit darker at the bottoms, like that. And then finally with these small ones, I'm just going to dab a little bit, just catching the very edge. If you can see, I don't want it to go all the way down, but I'm just going to sort of highlight the edge of this with the darker blue, and it just ties it in nicely with the larger ones because they're going to have a little bit of darker blue on as well. So you can see I'm not bringing that down, I'm just catching the very edges. And again, you know, if you want to wear gloves for this. You can see I'm going to be blue fingered by the end. So there are small ones, they're done. Now we need the detail on these larger ones. So what I'm going to do is use this sugar flare, and I'm just going to pop a little bit in here. Don't need much at all. And I'm going to use a really tiny brush. Now which one? This one. So you can see it's super tiny. And this is a nail art brush. So I've got these from Amazon and they're really good. I seem to have something on that. So you can see I've got a little bit of dust on here, but never fear. So with this, we're going to just mark out where we want our darker stuff to be. So I'm just going to dab around. We want some yellow at the very bases of these. So I'm going to do that. And then we want another sort of dark pattern around the edges at the top as well. So you can see you're just using very light brush strokes. don't worry if you're not a great painter. These, you know, these are great flowers to practice on. Your painting and dusting skills. You could, if you haven't got airbrush paint, you could just make a little paste like we did with the yellow, with some white spirit, you know, your rejuvenator spirit, your dipping solution or your vodka, to make a little paint as well, a runny paint. So you can see there's several ways to paint these up. So your airbrush paint, your gel colour, or your dusts. So, and these flowers do look like they've been painted. If you just keep going along the lines where you've put your veins, then you're not going to go wrong. Now this one has a bit of white in the middle, and then it goes darker again. So we've got another little line here, just along the edge of this petal. So you can see, you know, don't worry if you make a mess of it. These are tiny little flowers, and often when you put them together, they still look really cool and really good. So don't worry if you make a mess of them. You know, it's trial and error. I'm doing this super fast just for demonstration purposes, so it's not the neatest, but it'll still look cute when it's all put together. So don't worry. So you've got your guideline there. You can go a bit more if you'd like to, or just leave it as that. Now with the one that's a bit more heart-shaped, we're going to go round in the shape, so like so. Okay, so that's our blue done. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of dust in here, some yellow dust, and I'll just show you can dust this up as well. So you can mix the two. Okay, now let's start to do our leaves. So I'm going to put those to one side to dry, and I'm going to bring over our leaves, which are nice and dry now. So these look pretty flat and just pretty boring. You know, there's nothing interesting to them. They don't look very real at the moment. But if you dust them up a bit, like so, then you can see they look much more real. So let's get some green. I'm going to use some olive green, which is quite a darker green, and I'm going to use some gooseberry green as well. And I'm just going to start to dust these up. I might even put a little bit of yellow on as well. So I'm just going to dust the whole thing with this darker green first off. And this means that the petal dust goes nicely into the veins that we've made and just gives it a little bit more of a realistic look. So you can see they've dried in quite a nice shape just on the petal pad. This one's creased right over, but I like that. I'm going to paint the backs as well. The same for the backs of these. So I'm doing this really quickly. You can take your time as usual. I'm always doing it quickly for demonstration purposes. And then, got some blue on there. I'm just going to take a little bit of this sort of yellowy green put it maybe around the edges and in a little bit to some parts of the leaf, just to give it a bit of shading and make it look like it's a bit more multi-tonal. You know, this doesn't have to be uniform, you can pop this anywhere. You can see how quickly I'm doing it. Just go for that a bit more with the darker green up the middle. And then what I like to do often is add a little bit of purple, because I think it really sort of brings the leaves to life. I like to go around the edge with a bit of purple or a little bit of aubergine. Just sort of around the edges and maybe in over a little bit. And you can see that's sort of made the leaf look a lot more realistic than just the flat colour if you don't dust your leaves up. So hopefully you can see that. If you're worried about getting these dark dusts onto your cake, if you're putting these on a cake, you can always spray them with confectioner's glaze or give them a steam. So that's that. Now let's tape these up and we'll get finished. So I'm just going to move this dusty paper out of the way so I don't make too much of a mess. I'm actually going to give my hands a little rub because I don't want to get green on the blue petals. Add a little rub as well. And we're ready to go. So I'm just going to use some green tape here. We don't need full width, so I'm just going to cut this down the middle. If you've got half width tape, even better. But if you don't, you can just rectify that by cutting it down the middle, like so. And I think we'll start with our purple one, just to give that blue one a little bit more time to dry. So I'll bring over our purple leaves, which are dry now. So you can see they were very shiny when we first did them, but they're nice and matte now. Now I hate to see a white wire, so I'm just going to tape a bit of green on these first. If you haven't used florist tape before, then just give it a little stretch and it sticks to itself. So that releases the glue and it will stick to itself. So I'm just going to pop some on these first. Now, taking our heart-shaped one, we're going to go first in with that. I'm just going to bend it back at the base a little bit, and then I'm going to take the two larger ones, bend those back at the base a little bit, just bend the wires back, and those three are going to tape together. Now, you might want to just tape them individually, or you can add them on one at a time if you'd prefer, but make sure you secure them right up to the tips. You can see that's beginning to look like a pansy. Have them further back. Depends how open you want them. You can have them as open or as closed as you'd like. And then the same with the last two. So the heart-shaped one usually goes to the top, and then these smaller ones go at the back and underneath. I'm just going to do one at a time for these small ones. Don't worry if they're not in the right position, you can manipulate them round a bit when you've finished. So that's going to go there, that's going to go there, heart-shaped on top, and these two smaller ones are going to go underneath. And bring your tape all the way down. And as I say, they haven't got very big stems, pansies, so you don't have to have it too long. looking good. So that's like a nice open one that you would see in the evening. Now to finish it off, we're just going to need a tiny little bit of paste. So let's take a tiny bit of white florist paste. We need the tiniest ball. In fact, that's probably too much, even smaller. Tiny ball. I'm going to put a tiny bit of egg white on. You can use edible glue if you prefer. I'm just going to pop that on there, and that's going to go right, oops, not there. Well, right in the centre. I'm just going to get my Dresden tool. I'm just going to pop it down, little hole in the middle, and just spread it out a bit. And then when that's dry, you can pop some yellow dust on it as well. And that just finishes off your pansy at the front. Now next we're going to put a little calyx on the back, and that's us done. So I've already rolled out some green paste, and I've got a little 5-star cutter here. I shall do two. I'll do one for the blue one as well. Sticky now, so I've got the egg white on my fingers. I'm just going to take the pad over, the petal pad. I'm going to pop them on the petal pad and I'm going to just thin them out a little bit with the fatter end of the Dresden tool, although they are pretty thin. And then I'm just going to bring them in a little bit, just to give them a little bit of shape. Now you can dust these up as well. So I'm just going to pop that on there. I'm going to dust them up green. You can take your time and do this much more can do it nicer than I'm going to do it now, but I'm just going to show you for demonstration. So I'm going to dust that up, pop a little bit of edible glue on the back, and we're going to just pop it on the back of our pansy. And that just neatens the back and finishes it off as well. And again, you can have this as open or closed as you want. You can have them flopping down, or you can stick it all down. So that's our purple one. Now all we need to do is put some leaves on it. So the leaves go out over. I'll get some more tape, and we'll have a small one at the top, then a larger one, and then finally quite a big one at the bottom. So there we go with our purple pansy. That looks nice, doesn't it? There's our lovely little blue pansy as well. So let's put those together. And they're going to look really nice alongside our other set. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you have a go. I hope you have really good fun with the colours and the different painting techniques. So whether you use gel or airbrush or petal dusts. Please tag me in anything that you make. I'd love to see your creations and I'd love to see how artistic you can be. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and then you'll be first to see all the new tutorials. There's lots coming out. If you want support with your cake business, then come and join us on our free Facebook group, Urban Cake Collective. If you want help with your sugar flowers, then please come and join Urban Flower Collective. And hopefully I shall see you soon. Bye for now.